Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM. Hey, we are delighted that you're here today. We're going to talk about something that is really top of mind these days when we think about helping communities. Nahanni Ackroyd is with us. She is the owner of Ackroyd Financial Services. Her colleague and friend, Laurie Fox, is the director of the Will Power campaign. We're going to break it all open for you right now. So thanks for tuning in. Hi, you two. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kathy. Great to be here.
Glad you're here. Laurie, could you start us off, please, and tell us a little bit about what the Will Power campaign is, please?
Yes, absolutely. So this is a national public awareness campaign. And the goal of this campaign is really to inspire Canadians to think differently about their charitable giving.
Sure.
Because, when we think about our charitable giving, we think about the cash that we have on hand to donate. But the truth is, the little known truth is that you can actually do more if you plan out your giving and give through your wills or through your will, through your registered funds, through your life insurance, for example. Make that really big impact, not to mention really meaningful impact that continues on for generations to come.
So just to be a little cheeky here, because it is my nature, we have willpower, right? I'm thinking willpower, and then will power, a very different context. One is the legacy that you're leaving, and the other is the willpower it takes to actually put those dollars aside to think about giving. So I wonder if we can talk a little bit about the whole process. How did willpower come to play?
So, Willpower is actually a collaboration of about 500 charities, financial advisors, legal professionals across the country. And we've worked in this space for a long time, as Nahanni can attest to. We speak to donors, we speak to clients, we get an understanding of the kind of impact they want to make in this world. And so we hear from them the kind of things they want to do. And we know that there's these strategies out there for Canadians to take advantage of, but they don't know about them and they don't take advantage of them. So we kind of all got together and say, we could raise billions of dollars for charitable good in this country if we just showed Canadians how to take advantage of these different ways of giving.
Well, you certainly have the right sidekick to have with you. Nahanni Ackroyd is very well known on Vancouver Island for the 100 women who give, and they give generously to our community. Nahanni, welcome to the program. It's so delightful to have you here. I know that you've shifted a little bit from 100 Women Who Care, but let's talk a little bit about what your background is and why you got involved with this project.
Sure. Thanks, Kathy. I used to work in charities many, many years ago and have experienced gifts that were well-intentioned, but not necessarily what the charity would have wanted, and probably not what the donor would have wanted if they realized how it was going to go. And so that really illustrated a need for this conversation. It's really about the conversation between the charity and the person who wants to donate, and then taking some advice from your professionals around you, your legal, your financial advisors, your accountant, to see what actually makes sense for the person who's giving. And yes, I'm still a member of the 100 plus Women Who Care Mid-Island. It's a different way of giving. It's more a quarterly donation. And what we're talking about now is really how can you magnify a gift? And there's so many people in Canada, we give regularly. We donate at the grocery store, we donate officially online or in person to those charities. We volunteer a lot. And those charities have struggled, some of them through the pandemic. And this is a planned gift is such an amazing, I still get goosebumps when I talk about it because it's such a good gift for a charity to receive a gift that isn't allocated ideally, right? For the charities, from the charity's perspective, a gift that comes where they can use it for what they need is amazing. Or a gift that comes that they know is going to come and it's for something they need is amazing. A gift that comes and it's to build something that has nothing to do with your mandate isn't really a gift, unfortunately. And so to actually talk about it helps make such a difference.
Well, I'm really glad that you're here because you're quite right. You know, there's something to be said about the charitable situation as it is in Canada right now, particularly after the pandemic, but also the nature of Canadians as a whole. We are givers, whether it's of our volunteer time, whether it's our financial resources, whether if it's lending an ear or holding a hand. Canadians tend to be very open to the kind of idea that we all are in this together, and therefore let's all sort of contribute into this bucket. But nonprofit agencies as a whole have a very hard time because they're consistently looking for a grant. Somewhere along the line, grant management comes into it. They have to reapply over and over again. Very different from the context we're talking about today. This, as you said, this chilling effect of giving, right? It's a brilliant way for people to invest in the future. So I'm curious, Nahanni, how did you get involved in the Willpower campaign?
Yeah. Well, I've known about the Canadian Association of Gift Planners for a long time. And when I worked in charities, I had some involvement with going to some, some workshops, that kind of thing. And then as a financial advisor, I was like, this makes sense to be part of this organization because you're talking to people who are already thinking about these things. There's some of the charities I'm working so hard to educate, and I'm like, please, you need to think about this. Charities who've joined CAGP and the Willpower campaign know how important this is. And Willpower does education for the charities around how important it is as well, and how to implement it in a simple, effective way for charities of any size. And then for financial advisors, for us to be talking to people who, and making sure they understand the implications of what they have. Like Laurie mentioned, the registered investments or life insurance. There's going to be tax implications at someone's passing. And we don't always talk about that, and it's not necessarily comfortable. But understand that there's going to be taxes paid, but there's some ways that you can mitigate that or make that go away completely with some planning.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone these days, especially, I mean, I don't go down the political rabbit hole ever, but I know that there's a lot of people that are very concerned about their dollars and cents right now, and they want to see their money going to a good cause. Laurie, Nahanni brought up a wonderful comment about how easy it is, the educational process, and how other charity, how nonprofit agencies can join and be potentially a part of this. Could you walk us through a little bit of that, please?
Sure. From, the public side, I think, Nahanni brought up a good point that we often don't want to talk about this, right?
Yes.
We're talking about our deaths, we're talking about what comes after. So we really put it off. But I think if you speak to anybody who's actually gone through the process of, planning out what they want to do, it can actually be quite meaningful. So I think the first thing to do is kind of get over that hump of, well, let's actually sit down and figure out what we want to do. And once you've figured out what you want to do, the process actually is quite simple. You figure out what charity you want to support. Ideally, you're speaking to the charity. As Nahanni said, you want to kind of coordinate what you're doing with what they need. So make sure that your gift indeed does meet their mandate. And they can provide you information that you can take to your lawyer to actually write a clause in your will. But the really, one of the things we talk about in Willpower, which is really speaking to a financial advisor. If you have one, we have advisors through the Willpower campaign that can help actually to make sure that gift is actually really tax efficient, that you're using the tax vehicles like maybe just a straight cash gift in your will, or perhaps it's a registered fund or life insurance, that you're speaking to your advisor about that. And that's just, a conversation or two with your advisor. So
yeah, and I think, sorry to interrupt you. I think like the base point all the time is to talk to your financial advisor. I know that a lot of people in in all of our communities, first of all, when they think about the will right off the get-go, it's that's the permission to actually move into the afterlife, right? If they think about having a will, it means that, they're not necessarily, a lot of people are not creating wills, right? Until it's the last minute. But wouldn't it be great if people revisited the conversation and thought, okay, wait a second, the will is no longer about my death, but rather about my life. How can I support the people and the initiatives that I have in my mind that are impactful and meaningful, besides my children, besides my family, besides, all those other pieces? and really go to the cause, right? You hear a lot of people that, that have very few family members, and suddenly they're giving everything they have to the CAT Foundation, or to, some foundation where there's not there, there is a bit of thought to it, but really, is there? How can we make this a less difficult conversation for people, do you think? And Nahanni might be able to answer that better. I'm not sure, but
I'll take that one. I'll use my own actually as an example, if you like. So my will I did around 2015, because I was a single mom at the time, 2 kids, and would go through everything. So of course the kids will get, when I pass,
sure,
all good. And then it was a notary I was talking to at the time, and he's like, okay, so now I call it the disaster clause. What do we do? What happens to your assets if something happens to the 3 of you at the same time? Oh, so I was fine talking about my death. Like, I was good. We're talking about my death. I'm like, da, 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 da. And then when we talk about all 3 of us, I start crying. And then I'm like, just give it to my parents. And then, then I was leaving and I thought about it again. And I'm like, no, because they're just going to donate it. They don't need it. They're just going to donate it. And I'm like, well, who do I want to give it to then?
yeah.
And so it didn't have to be the first part of my will, but it was in the second part of my will as the disaster clause. So in that case, something's happened to the 3 of us, then part of it went to charity. So it just a level. And then recently, last year, we redid our wills. I have a partner now. And so it's different obligations, different things happening in there. So I didn't leave didn't have charity in my will. But what I've done now is I've put some of my life insurance has a portion that will go to charity. So then it doesn't matter who's alive or dead in my will and what's going on there. Really, it's a matter of choosing the charity, you get right in their name, their legal name with the number, and they're a beneficiary. That's it. It's that simple. It costs nothing to do that. I can change the percentage, I can change the charity, I can change all sorts of things at any point. And it costs me nothing to do that. But I know that I've got that charitable giving in my plan.
I never thought about putting it as an attachment to your life insurance. We tend to think about putting it with our assets, not necessarily with our life insurance. But life insurance in itself is an asset, especially if you prematurely pass. So that's a really brilliant way to think about it. It's very simple. It's a beneficiary designation. Laurie, how did you decide, or did you decide? There are so many charities, there's so many decisions, there's so many potential opportunities. Like, how hard was it to figure out who's who in the zoo, even in your own personal world?
Yeah, when we did our first will, actually, it was when we had our child, which is often when people write their first will. Yeah. And my husband and I decided to choose our top charity each. So we decided that, we have many charities, we have many causes that we care about, but we actually wanted to narrow down to 2 charities we can make a really big impact on, as opposed to spreading it out. And that was our choice. Yeah. And the way we've actually done it in our family, and I've heard this from many other families as well, is we chose to leave a percentage of our in our will to our charities. So we've left, for example, 5% to our charities. There's 95% left to take care of our son. And we've kind of brought our son into this a little bit. So we start talking to him about, what we're doing, and we call it a family legacy. And we're kind of teaching him charity. We're teaching him to care about the causes we care about and to give back. And that creates that kind of waterfall effect. So, Nahanni, you talk about doing it and it's disaster clause and there's tears, and I totally get that. And we kind of wanted to switch it around a little bit and make it more the celebration of life, the celebration about what our family is about, and a way that we can kind of have that legacy live during our lifetime even. You know what I mean?
Totally understand. And I completely, I resonate with both of you in that way, because there is the part of the, oh my goodness. And then there is the part of, who do I stand for? who am I today in this life, and what do I want to carry forward for sure. I know that in my family, legacy giving looks very different. I haven't attached it to life insurance or to this and that, but I also know that there's certain causes that at this stage of my life, I have more of a affinity towards wanting to ensure that they're okay. But those ideals change every decade or so. And I think that a lot of people also forget at times to revisit their will, revisit their planning from the get-go. And so this is actually almost a call to action for people to sort of say, well, wait a minute, when was the last time that I looked at my paperwork? When was the last time I sat down and determined what I was really worth and where I would like my focus to be walking ahead? So I'm embracing both of your thoughts on, the legacy part of it. I think for our listeners, some people don't really understand even what the giving choices are when it comes to, I'm not talking about companies to support there's so many different people. We're not going to name specifics as to, which organization a person should or shouldn't, apply to. That's not the premise of the conversation. But the premise of the conversation is, what does it look like to you as a person? Where do you see, from a listening perspective, where do you see where you want to take your family and the legacy? I sort of skirted around what my question was. Let me bring it back to the question. There's a whole lot of different kinds of giving. Legacy giving means something different than just dropping something in the donation box at the corner store. So could you explain for our listeners who might not know, what does legacy giving actually mean, and why is it so impactful?
Sure. Maybe Nahanni, I'll start, and then you take it on. So legacy giving really is, and I'm going to kind of use a broader term. I'm going to call it gift planning. Gift planning or plan giving really is about planning out your giving. So typically people give, like I said at the beginning, their annual donation, and maybe, drop a couple coins in at the grocery store or give when someone asks. That's kind of their current cash giving. But what we're talking about in gift planning is boosting or amplifying what you're doing through planning out your giving. So the kind of different things people can look at when they're planning out their giving are things like giving through their will, giving through their registered funds, like their RSPs, their RIFs, their TFSAs, giving through life insurance, giving through securities. And Nahanni, you as a financial advisor probably can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and so part of it is, at a certain stage in people's lives, they may have accumulated, and the will that you wrote when you're 30 is different than what you actually have later. And if you still leave it in effect, okay, 5% of this goes here and 5% goes here, and it's changed. And so the tax implications have changed. And so sometimes people think they're making a gift of a certain amount, but the rules about what's taxable and what isn't have changed potentially, or the magnification of it has changed because the asset has grown over that time. And so we see it in things. So it's planned giving, but planned giving might not be just at your death. It might be for 10 years leading up to that. What makes sense? So shares that you bought in 1980 for some big company that has grown and grown and grown and grown, that has a huge taxable implication when it changes ownership, if it's not to a spouse. And so that can be used as a gift. And we can actually get rid of that capital gain completely by donating that security to a registered charity. And there's that's one example. RRSPs, Registered Retirement Savings Plans, or Registered Retirement Income Fund, when the RSP grows up, there's a generation of people who are taught to save really, really well. And they also potentially have pensions because they were a generation when there were these pensions. So they're passing away, and this is the window now where they're passing away with those RIFs in place. And a RIF of $500,000, say 500,000, when you pass away, unless it's moving to your spouse, it's as if you took it fully into income on the day that you died. So now you're paying, the probate doesn't matter so much, it's the income tax. Now in BC is over 50% on that. So I value the things that our taxes do for us, but you could name a registered charity and mitigate so much of that tax, if not all of it, with some planning. Ideally, plan A is we spend it all ourselves or we give it away to people, you know, that's all fine. But plan B is sometimes you've died and you have a lot of assets and nothing can be done to plan for that after you pass. It has to be done while you're alive. Your executor can only do so much, but they have to follow your wishes. And if you haven't put your wishes out there in writing, in a legal document, they don't know. And they can't do something different from what you said. So, understand.
And you can't actually just write it on a piece of paper and stick it in your freezer and call it a day. That's not.
It just makes it harder for everybody.
It just makes it harder for everyone. I like what you said about the $500,000 that would go to taxes, right? Or 250,000 of $500,000 would go to taxes, as opposed to going to support a charity of your choosing. I think when I think about legacy giving, you both have defined it perfectly. You know, yes, it's the end of life plan, but I like the fact that legacy giving is something that can be started today. It's a 10-year or 15-year or 20-year choice that you can make with some of your assets that are continuous and continue to support the charities of your choosing. How hard is it to separate? Like really, how hard is it to make that happen?
It's so easy. Like
it's so easy. I know, right?
It's so easy. It depends on each person's situation, right? And their goals for their family and their values. Identifying a charity or several is one of the hardest things.
Yes.
And what Laurie said about choosing, you know, a few to really support and to really create something very impactful, or do you do a little bit to a whole bunch? Those are different approaches. And so it's different for everybody. It's talking about what are the implications. There's always a plan with charities. If a charity was to fold, they have a plan for where their assets would go. So there's those kind of things. But you can have some fun, like talk to charities and find out what they need. What are you thinking of? What's coming up? Hey, I'm thinking of making a gift. Can you tell me about your organization? And that could be really fun to shop around and talk to people, right? And you don't have to tell the charity that you're going to make a gift, but it's nice for them to just have a list of, here's some things that you don't know when they're coming. There's a charity I work with that had a life insurance policy. They knew about it, that somebody held, but she was young. So, they're thinking, okay, this is a long way away. Well, unfortunately, she died young. And so they got this beautiful gift and her family all knew about it. They knew it was coming. And so there's these things, it's that idea of the legacy and passing it along. And like Laurie said, getting your family involved and thinking of it as a family situation, because then you're training the next generation as well, which, Laurie and I should be doing, right, in our roles. So you can have some fun shopping with the charities, talk to your financial advisor, your accountant about, okay, I want to make a gift. Does it make more sense financially to do it in certain ways? Looking at what do you have? And then they help you go, okay, you know what, you're going to have this. This is going to create this is going to create this. This is what would happen if you were to die next week. Okay, is that what you want to have happen? Yes or no? And then talking between the accountant and the financial advisor, where does it make sense? What does it make sense to give and in what way?
And, I think I will just, add here, we talk about this being simple. Let your financial advisor do the work of figuring out, what's tax efficient. I think the only point for people here is plan out your giving, because you can do so much more and save on taxes. Speak to your advisor about the tax portion. You can find advisors who will give you free consultations on the Willpower website if you don't have one yourself. And then it's just a matter of putting a clause in your will or naming a charity as a beneficiary of your RSP or life insurance if that's what you're trying to do. Easy as pie. Have the financial advisor do the hard work.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in get them to do the hard. That's what they are specializing in, and we don't have to be experts at everything in life. It's good to know a little bit about a lot of things for sure, and this is one of the ways we get to find that out. But for me, more importantly, what resonates is that sort of the teaching it forward and paying it forward piece, right? We're teaching our kids all the time, to look both ways before they cross the street. And we teach them how to, prepare for their new job when they're first starting out of high school and going into university and college. We support them when it comes to so many different areas of our life. But some of the most memorable things that I've experienced anyway was with my son Dakota when he was a kid. And it was like, okay, every year at a certain time of the year, for us, it was Christmas, but it doesn't have to be Christmas. We had a ritual every year, and that was to give back to community in one way or another. So when he was 3 and 4 years old, it was which of his Batman toys, because he was a big Batman kid, which one of his Batman toys did he want to share with another kid who may not have so much, right? So that was the beginning of the legacy. As he got older, those conversations developed and changed. All right. For many kids, it was the UNICEF box that used to come around. I don't know if you remember those little paper boxes for UNICEF. My point is, we don't have those areas very often unless we as parents come up with it and say, listen, this is an opportunity, and children learn and lead by example. So if we're as adults teaching our children by our own example of doing the right thing, we're continuously bringing the movement forward. I just kind of have to take a quick moment to go into a station identification. So I'm going to do that right now. And then when we come back, we're going to start breaking this open just a little bit more. If you have just tuned into Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM, hey, thank you. We love it when you tune in every Monday. So please keep doing so. At 1 o'clock, we're always waiting just for you. Tune us in and we'll play whatever we can for you to make sure that you learn something in this absolutely wonderful Monday afternoon. Along with that, we also ask you to team up with us on YouTube. Join us, subscribe. You can watch the video version of this live broadcast absolutely on the YouTube station. It's available for you. Just go to act3mediaproductions.com. There's a link on there that tells you how to subscribe, and share. And also feel free to listen to us if you're not close to CHLY 101.7 FM. Go to Spotify, go to iHeartRadio. We're there. You'll find us. No problem at all. Just tune in, Act 3, and there we will be, and you can listen to this broadcast again, particularly if there is something that you heard that you really want to carry forward. I do also want to remind everybody that on March 31st, there is a walk that is planned. It's the Transgender Day of Visibility. So I'd like you to support our community if you can. Show up in front of our city hall. We're going to be walking down the ways to Mafio Sutton Park. The idea is to support the LGBTQ Two-Spirit community and help them be reminded that transgender people live in our community as well. Hey, listen, there's lots of wonderful things that are going on. I do want to point out that this is international, that March 8th was International Women's Day, but we're celebrating International Women's Month. If you feel that you are an inspiring woman, which I know you are, please share with us in the chat box of our YouTube station some of the things that you did to celebrate. We'd really appreciate hearing your point of view. So thanks everybody for tuning into Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM. Back to our guests. Our guests today are Nahanni Ackroyd. She is the owner of Ackroyd Financial Services. And we also have with us Laurie Fox. Laurie is the director of Willpower Campaign. And we've got so much more to unpack. Thanks again, you guys. I really am so delighted that you're here. I'm always excited about sharing something with our community that is not only makes sense, but has an impact all the way down the road. And I'm always therefore curious how people came to the place where they got and are doing the work that they're doing. I know that Nahanni had already, she spoke to it a bit earlier, she had already been so much a part of legacy giving and charitable giving. How did you get involved, Laurie?
So me too, actually. I had been working in charities for, I guess, almost 2 decades. And I'd been working with donors, similar to how Nahanni works with her clients, to speak to them about their donations, speak to them about how they could make a legacy gift, the kind of impact they would make on the charities that I worked for. And it was actually on my maternity leave, when I was having my son, that I heard about campaigns in the UK and across Europe that were encouraging their public to leave a gift in their will. I was seeing the billions of dollars that was generated in these other countries, and I thought, we need to bring this here to Canada. So I started working on it with our colleagues at CGP and our charities and advisors across the country. And actually, Kathy, we did some public polling recently, and great news, we found that since the campaign started, an extra 1.2 million more Canadians have left a gift in their will.
Wow.
It's $38 billion in future donations that are coming to causes in our community. So these are ordinary Canadians making a huge impact. It's really exciting.
Yeah, I could never have imagined it would be in the billions. The millions, yes, but the billions to me is really quite outstanding. But to be clear, those gifts are not all coming out at the same time, right? These are all leveled out and all of that. So it is still very important that even though there's some money coming into nonprofit agencies for sure, it is very important that people continue to keep that going and keep letting that legacy move ahead. I also was going to ask you, there were some other statistics that I was looking at from some of the information that you had put. And it was in regards to the survey talking about how some have considered leaving charitable donations, and some were already aware that they could. Have you seen a change in those numbers in the last few years? And how often are people coming to the fold? Is it something that's happening all the time, or maybe you can share a little bit more with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in addition to this increase in people who've gone ahead, they've actually already written a gift in their will or named a charity as a beneficiary of their RSP, for example. We have this other number of people who are seriously considering it, planning on doing it. They're kind of in the pipeline, we say they're gathering their information. They're just waiting for when they're going to write or revise their wills. And what's interesting is that the demographics have changed a little bit. You'd think that this would be, kind of the area of people who are retiring and thinking about their legacy and looking back.
Yeah.
But a lot of these people who are thinking about leaving a gift in their will or who've already done it are actually millennials. They're actually young Canadians, yeah, who are writing their wills for their first time or have a RSP or life insurance policy through work and have decided to name a charity as their beneficiary. So that's pretty cool. This is kind of like a changing of the guard that we're seeing.
Yeah, I'm inspired by that, to tell you the truth, especially because there's been so much conversation sort of bubbling around that young people don't really necessarily, they're thinking more of themselves. I have never found that to be the case, but I find it interesting that that's still the kind of common conversation. And yet we have statistics to prove that that's in fact, an amazing way for young people to give back. Charitable giving, we've got legacy that we talk about, but when it comes to charitable giving, there's a number of different ways. People can do it through payroll deductions and things like that as well. Does Willpower campaign also, or is that something that should be strictly done through the financial planner? Can people do a by the month sort of thing, or is it really something that's tied to something that's already in place? Perhaps Nahanni should answer that question. Do you know what I mean, Nahanni? Are you
Yeah,
I'm thinking
this is a bit different, I would say.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
There's the regular types of donations that you do, which would be, say, or a payroll deduction or a monthly savings kind of plan. And then this is taking that, and sometimes it's turning it on its head. So if you're donating $100 a month to a registered charity, that's lovely. They appreciate it. It's good. You get your tax deduction. But if you talk to your financial advisor and we go, what if that was $100 a month into a life insurance policy with the charity named as the beneficiary?
Right. So you're talking sometimes $500,000 versus $1,200 for the year.
Yeah. And
right.
And ideally do both, right? If it's, so that the charity has the money today, because we don't want to take away from what they have to work with today. But hey, you know what? We could really make this something supersized. And it's not the right thing for everybody, but for some people it is. And so for the financial advisors, I think it's our job to be talking to people partly, okay, so who are you donating to? What do you donate? And are you interested in some other ideas to help, that can do something else with that money as well?
So, and also this is a national campaign, right, Laurie? So being that it's national, any of those tax implications are also going to be different from province to province, as well as the federal reserves, right?
Yes.
The tax credit, yeah.
Yeah, the tax implications definitely are different from province to province. These vehicles generally work the same from province to province. Of course, there's a bit of a difference in Quebec when it comes to registered funds. But yeah, again, it's something that you want to speak to your financial advisor about. And I think it's important to point out too that not all financial advisors are aware or comfortable speaking about charitable tax giving. You should suss it out. There is information on our website that you can take to your financial advisor. But we're also lucky to have kind of a niche group of financial advisors at willpower.ca who are very expert in this. We provide these consultations, including Nahanni, of course.
So I'm really glad that you shared that. And I'm also curious about the resources that you have available on your website. I did forget during our station identification, my bad, to tell people to go get a piece of paper and a pen. I usually do by now, so that they can in fact reach out to the both of you and be able to ask the questions and learn more about what both of you do. So I would encourage people, if you are able to right now, just reach on over, grab yourself that information, that paper, and in a few minutes we'll give you the address, their email address, and all of the pertinence. But I'm a little bit of a competitive person, and I know that that's not very good. I shouldn't really say that out loud. But do you find that there is an age group? I know that sounds terrible, but I was originally going to go with a province that was more generous than another province, but I thought that might be a little bit hard to gauge. But have you seen an age group necessarily where there seems to be more of a larger group of people that are attached to that age group that give? Or is it like a lot of seniors that are doing it more so than the millennials that we just spoke about a moment ago?
Well, when it comes to legacy giving, or maybe we'll start kind of with annual giving, I think, we're definitely seeing the, perhaps I'm going to say 50 plus boomers who give more regularly to charity, give on an annual basis, and can afford to give more. Their children are out of the home.
Exactly.
They've made their money. And a lot of them are definitely thinking about legacy giving, and they have a lot to give. We're going to be going through our biggest transfer of wealth in history, if not already going through it. But I think what's really interesting about the younger Canadians, the millennials we talked about particularly, that they don't, although they don't have as much wealth to give, and they're not giving as regularly as older donors right now. Yeah. They are very much purpose-driven in everything they do when it comes to figuring out their finances, doing their estate planning, shopping. They're very purpose-driven. And I think this is probably why, or a big reason why, so many of them are thinking about and doing legacy giving. So I think there's a lot of interest there that shouldn't be ignored in those younger Canadians.
Well, that's another reason why I'm sort of asked about the competition, please, because I do want to encourage people that, yes, there is a stereotype of older adults, perhaps, that had their kids are gone and, their families are already well enough supported in themselves that their kids don't necessarily need their money or want their money for that matter. And so, but the trends I'm seeing are that it's becoming so much more of an everyday experience for people of all ages. You and I talked a moment ago about, what we're teaching our kids, right? We're getting them to already consider it. So I guess I can imagine, when I was a mom and my son, well, I'm still a mom, but, when my son was in his teenage years, it was a little bit of a different time, economically speaking. I was preparing for, other costs that are associated with raising young people. And so I didn't have that same amount of income to give away. But a lot of people are of the belief that they need to hold on, and they hold on to their money so tightly that they are not always able to be fluid enough to accept the goodness that comes with it. And money, like everything else, is energy, right? When you give, it just keeps coming back twofold. So it sounds a little bit esoterical and probably doesn't necessarily fit this conversation, but I encourage people not to hold on so tight and let their money actually do the good work that it's really designed to do. So that's a two-bit thing. Would you like to share how people find you, actually, what your website is? How do people find out more about the Willpower campaign?
Yes, you can go to willpower.ca. And that's where you can find a whole bunch of resources available there. So we've got some blog posts written by advisors that talk about some of these tax benefits, or talk about how to speak to family about leaving a legacy gift. We've got this legacy calculator where you can see, okay, well, what does 1 or 2% of my estate look like to charity? Holy crap, that's a 5-figure gift, and there's still 99% to loved ones. You can browse charities that you might want to support and see how they would use your future gift. And of course, you can find financial advisors who will give these consultations, as I mentioned earlier, as well as lawyers and online will writers to actually do the deed and write your will or update your will.
Yeah,
So
I think it's really important to get educated about it. So by all means, it's important to check out your website at willpower. I'm sorry, it was willpower.ca.
That's right, willpower.ca.
Okay, that's fabulous. Now, honey, how do people find you? We still have some time in our conversation, but I want to get your information out right away.
Sure. Well, through the willpower.ca website, I have a page there. But my email is nahanni@ackroydfinancial.com. So it's that. Just Google Nahanni Ackroyd, you'll find me.
So, I wonder, a lot of people resonate with stories of success that come from this kind of work. And I'm curious, Laurie, if you have seen with your eyes something that was really impactful about legacy giving that you might want to share with our listeners.
When I worked in charities before I worked in this campaign, of course, I had come across many donors who had left a gift in their will. And there's one donor that I had worked with who was a retired nurse, actually. So we're not talking, a wealthy philanthropist here. We're just talking about someone who owned their home, had a bit of savings and had kids. And she had left, I think it was 5% of her estate to our charity in her will. And it ended up being something like a $56,000 gift, something that she never would have been able to do in her lifetime.
Yeah.
And it actually changed the game for the charity that I worked for. We were able to create this program that we had been wanting to create for years to service people that were often ignored in our community. So, I mean, this woman had such an impact, and her kids got to see it. It became this kind of family pride and a way to remember mom.
Yeah, that absolutely moves me because I have worked in nonprofits for many years as well. And I know that one single person can actually make a difference, and such a huge, profound difference, in fact, that it affects hundreds of lives in the process very often, and sometimes thousands, depending on what the charity is or what the nonprofit agency is. And I know that people are often, minimizing their contribution by saying, well, I only give $10 or I only give $100. The mindset has not yet been created yet for people to say, hey, wait a second, 1% equals $56,000, right? That's amazing to me, right? That someone can do something so lovely and impact so many at the end. And you're quite right. I mean, it also is great for the children because not only do they get to celebrate their mother, they get to watch their mother's generosity in action, which is a brilliant and beautiful thing. Now, Nahanni, I'm curious on your end. Like, I know, I mean, you and I have been friends for a while, so I'm comfortable with where you started with some of the charitable thoughts, but I'd love for you to share a story of impact as well. Is there something that has reminded you why this is so important and why you joined the team of Willpower Campaign?
Well, I'll actually back it up to, I talk about this a lot and I do presentations about it. And so I don't know exactly always if people have enacted ideas based on what I've said, but even the 100+ women who care donations. So it's a crowdsourced chunk of money, $10,000 to $13,000, $14,000 that we would bring to a registered charity quarterly. And more times than not, the charity said, oh, that is just in time. And it's $10,000 to $14,000. So even some of the larger charities said we were just about to be considering layoffs, or we were just having a shortfall somewhere, right? And so that gift is unallocated. When we would donate that, it's just, here's the donation, you use it how you best need it. And as you know, grant writing doesn't usually cover admin, right? So
yeah, you bet.
To have that money come in, the charity didn't have to work very hard for it. All they had to do was write us tax receipts and come back and tell our group about their organization. And I think those kind of gifts are so very powerful. The charities know their work. They know what needs to be done. They know all those pieces. And so if you ask them, they'll tell you what they're up to and what's going on. And if you can find it in you to make it an unallocated gift, they get to decide where it's best used. Because what if I go in and talk to a charity today and they tell me these are our plans, this is what we're doing, and I go, great, this is what I want to use it for. Hope, you know, my plan is to live a fairly long time. So 20, 30 years from now, when I pass, what they're doing has probably shifted, and their goals have shifted. So how they can best use the money will have shifted. And so to let them, empower them to make the decision that they need with it, or to put it in an endowment so that it's money ongoing forever for them. So those conversations can be really, really powerful. I think I wandered off there, but you know.
No, but that's okay. That's okay. I entirely understand the wander, because what I recognize from it is that in my great good fortune of living in Nanaimo and working with so many different charities over the many years, the one thing that I know for sure is that charities are very different than businesses are. Many are run the same way, in all fairness, because business acumen is so very important. But the money comes from a different source, and very often there is a gap, and usually that gap is exactly that. It could be the administration, it could be the website design, it could be bringing on a new program coordinator or a support person to help to facilitate some of the good work of the charities. And it's a challenge because people are reinventing the wheel year after year. I know, I wish it was different, but it is the reality. And so at the end of the day, to be able to depend that there may be a few dollars coming in from this, you know, windfall source, and can happen right on time. I've also seen it happen right on time. I'm curious because there are so many charities, and I don't want to, again, we didn't want to talk about any specific one, but are we seeing some trends in what people are in need of across the country, and where some focused legacy dollars could be of great benefit?
Hard to say, because those legacy dollars will come in, not now, but in, a decade or 2 decades. And as Nahanni said, they're probably going to be put to what the need is at that time.
Sure.
Certainly when we're
Yeah.
talking about current cash donations, I think community need has really risen since the pandemic, and economic stability that's happened afterwards. So food banks, shelters, elder care, stuff like that has really seen an explosion in demand. These charities have seen so much demand, and they're not necessarily seeing the dollars they need to meet demand. That comes back on us as a population. That's us that are suffering from charities not being able to help our parents or help our neighbors.
Yeah, but again, the legacy piece though means that even though, we may not be able to deal with that moment in this moment, but at 10 years from now, those dollars will affect what it is that we've left behind, right? So it keeps it moving, keeps it forward, right?
There's a great story from one of the charities in our campaign, a shelter actually, who received a legacy gift, as Nahanni said, just in time. It was during the pandemic, and they were able to start kind of a food line during the pandemic, when so many more people were in need of these services. It's something that someone had planned, a decade before, but it showed up just when they needed it, just when the community needed it.
Yeah, it's almost angels work. We don't know what the future is going to be, but we know that there's wings there to support at some level or another, right in the time that it's needed the most. Laurie, I'm curious. I had a question in regards to the pandemic, because I know that even though we're kind of coming out of that for the most part, there's still an economic downturn. From a legacy giving perspective, did you notice a change in the donation percentages coming in? Have they dropped since the pandemic, or, what does that look like?
So here's an interesting thing. Certainly, we've heard from Canadians that their pocketbooks have been hurt. I think something like 54 or 52% of Canadians said that they've had to cut back on their charitable giving as a result.
Yeah.
But the great thing about legacy giving, and the reason it's become more and more popular, we've seen this growth in people leaving a gift in their will, is because, okay, well, maybe I can't donate this year, but I can leave a gift in my will. I can name a charity as a beneficiary of an RSP, because it's not money that I need now. It's money that's, it's going to be there after I pass. The majority of my family is taken care of. I'm just leaving a small percentage to charity. So whereas people might not be able to give in the same ways they have this year, they can leave that legacy gift. That's how they can contribute. And they can do so much more with that too.
Yeah, I'm a big believer, it's not out of pocket today. It's something that is going to be out of pocket long after you've passed on. So it's not a burden as such, but rather a gift. And what a gift actually means is something without, it's without strings attached, right? It's meant to be provided for the just in time moments. And I love the idea that somebody could do 1% or 2% or 5%. It's not, and still have 95% or more of their assets to share in other avenues as well. Brilliant, brilliant idea. We're coming to the close of our program. I can't believe we're almost already there. We're not quite there yet. We've got a couple things to happen first before that happens, but our time is definitely running out. And so I do appreciate, if you wouldn't mind, going back to how people can find you, how people can reach you. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about some life lessons.
Yes,
Laurie, would you mind sharing again the website?
Sure. So we're at willpower.ca. You can find resources and tools on the willpower.ca website.
Fantastic. Nahanni, how about you?
Yeah. So through the Willpower website, I have my own page, or Nahanni at ackroydfinancial.com or ackroydfinancial.com website.
Fantastic. Well, and I will make sure that if you've tuned in on our YouTube station, that all that stuff will be in the chat box below. You can just link right onto it and go straight to the page. It'll be fabulous. We're at my favorite part of the show, which is always that life lesson. It's the piece that we take away that we really want people to know if we could imbibe something on them. What might that be? So Nahanni, if you don't mind, would you go first? What's your takeaway?
I'm going to go back to, I've said it a few times, it's just talk to people. Talk to the charities that mean something to you. Talk to your financial advisor. If you don't have a financial advisor, as Laurie said, there are some of us around who are happy to give you a half-hour conversation about it. It'll cost you nothing, and you might just go away and go, oh, I can change my beneficiary on my group RSP through work, or my life insurance through my employer. It costs you nothing to do that. It's easy to do. And then it can be as complex or as simple as you want to make it. But it can be very simple to make a very impactful gift. Creating a legacy, you can have your name on the legacy or not, depending on what you want to have happen. But if you don't write it down, it can't happen. So please reach out to somebody you trust and want to talk to about this, and take action. That's the part. Sometimes we think about it, we think about it, we think about it, and then either it's too late or we lose capacity to make that decision. And so to do it while you have capacity, while you have the willpower to do it. Ooh, that was good.
Yeah, I know how cool, right? And that's my favorite part. It's the willpower, right? I'm a big believer of the willpower. I love that that's the title of this conversation, as well as the title of the campaign. I so resonate with how simple it is to do this by actually talking to a financial advisor or talking to friends. But the reason why it resonates is probably different than it might be for other people. When I think about it, I think about, when you're getting married or your kids are getting married, you go around to all the shops in town and you check out the cakes and you check out the outfits and you go to the planning of the reception. You go to many different halls. It might take you several months to sort of figure out when you're planning a wedding or a major event, a retirement party, or what have you, right? If we think about wearing this concept, this legacy project, as if you're celebrating a wedding, right? And you're going to the different charities and you're checking them all out and you're learning about what's going on in your community, twofold happens. One, you get to know who's in your neighborhood and what charities are serving or across the country, where you feel you can know a little bit more about that. And that in itself is a good thing. And second of all, I think it's a really fun thing to go from place to place to place to check all things out. You know more about it, you have a little bit of fun. It's a great way to celebrate. Laurie, your thoughts? What would your takeaway be?
Well, I mean, we're kind of talking about the head and the heart here, right? So the head, it's just about being more strategic with your donations, being more strategic about how you want to give. And hey, there's tax benefits to be had too. But I just want to talk a little bit about the heart, because we've kind of brought that into the conversation as well. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, this is about you making an impact. This is about you contributing in ways that you want to contribute. have a much bigger contribution than you ever thought possible. And it's such a nice thing to do for your family, too. I think that's the part that we often ignore. Because if you think about it, when you pass, I mean, that's quite a difficult time for a lot of families. So, what about having something joyful and inspirational for your kids and your surviving spouse and for whoever to remember you by, to celebrate you by? And in your mind, that's something that can continue on for your grandkids and great grandkids. It's just a really beautiful sentiment. It's a really beautiful thing to do.
I couldn't agree with you more. When I think about most of my family, for people who know the show and they know me well, they know that many of my family members all passed away, and some of them very shortly, therefore, together. And throughout all of those processes over many years, the one thing that I always really wanted to celebrate was my grandmother, who consistently was making a difference in community, who consistently was a good Samaritan. And so when I think about the teachings that she left behind, just to be a good human, right? And a way that you can be a good human with just a little bit of modicum, a little bit of planning, a little bit of help. I mean, what better way to carry that meaning forward? It's so brilliant to be able to give back to community, especially when a community has been good to you. Thank you both for being here, and thank you for your wisdom. Thanks for sharing these wonderful, wonderful new ways to think about our financial security and our financial advice moving forward in our lives. I know for myself, I'll be making an appointment with my financial advisor and making sure that legacy will be a part of my donation process in the future. I didn't have, I've been in charities for a long time. I didn't think it would ever be this easy. And so hearing both of you speak about it so eloquently and so easily makes me want to jump on the bandwagon. I'm in. So this is a call to action to all of our listeners. I hope you'll be in too. Thank you so much for being with us today. Laurie Fox from the Willpower Campaign, Nahanni Ackroyd from Ackroyd Financial Services. All their information, like I said, is in the chat box if you're watching us on Zoom. And certainly if you go to willpower.ca, you'll find them both. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you so much, Kathy.
Pleasure, pleasure, you guys. All right, you guys, that does it for another episode of Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to see you next time. Have yourself a great week. Look after each other, and let's celebrate women this week. Have a great day. Bye for now.